All right, many thanks for staying with us. I'm so excited because, the second leg of the conversation has a guest that, I'm so happy, to be with in the studio this morning. I'm sure you would enjoy the conversation too. We're turning our attention, of course, to a very unique discussion because it's not every day you get to pull back the curtain on presidential power.
Absolutely, Ray. And with Garba Shehu's new book, according to the president, of course, it has the other part, lessons learned from the spokesperson. I hope I got that correct, but of course, we will correct that as we go on. We are promised more than just a glossy political highlights. This is an insider's deep dive into 8 years of national leadership.
From security to innovation, foreign policy to social welfare. It's like a backstage pass to the engine room of governance. Plus, it's not just for those knowledgeable in policy matters. Students, journalists, even the curious everyday citizen can find a lot to learn from this.
All right, the launch was a national moment of reflection, of course, with the big names, who steered President Buhari's administration, and I think that this book would also stir quite conversation today on Good Morning Nigeria. Yeah, don't you?
I agree, totally, without a doubt, and maybe a few debates too, with, things like this. Now, let's bring in the author. I mean, enough said already. The Senior Special Assistant to Nigeria's former President, Muhammadu Buhari. Many thanks for joining us, the one and the only Garba Shehu.
I don't know.
The fear of Garba Shehu in those days was the beginning.
No, don't go there.
All right. So, I'm just wondering. I wanted to start by asking you to tell us, your inspiration, what inspired, this book. You said it wasn't a bibliography; it was just a guide, for us journalists, practicing journalists. I mean, you are still a journalist, but we are still practicing journalists. And I'm wondering, why did you decide to actually put this book together now that you're out of government? Because you're seeking support. If you had put it out while you were there, probably a lot more people, you would have garnered more support, than what you probably will get, at the launch.
Well, thank you for bringing me back to television. You smiley faces after 2 years. And I'm happy to be here. And to say that, there is a duty to one's profession, journalism, public relations. There's a duty to the nation to write the history that one has gone through. I've written a book that essentially aims to do two things. One is to bring experience that one had garnered over the years of presidential communications. And let me say that, I was in the villa as special assistant media to former Vice President Atiku Abubakar in the second term of President Olusegun Obasanjo. We had a contrasting experience from what we had under Buhari. When we worked with Atiku Abubakar, we were fighting for the survival of our boss and of ourselves, because we also went through so much frequent detentions, trial, in court detention in Kuje prison and all of that.
How do you mean survival of your boss? Survival now? In what context?
In the sense of everything. The survival of his business, survival of his political future, survival of his family, all of which were under attack.
As a spokesperson?
In the open warfare that was declared between the office of the president and the office of the vice president. And we were caught in between. And we went through a lot, not only ourselves, our families. So people should learn that in comparison to when we served President Muhammadu Buhari for 8 years, when we were the ones that were being fought. Because, you know, there's this saying in Hausa that if you eat mangoes, flies will attack you. And so people were all over us. From Nigeria, see, leading clerics will go to British Parliament, will go to US Congress at their hearings, tell stories. Buhari is a Fulani man. He's a Fulani man, he's a Muslim, he's sponsoring Boko Haram to kill Christians in Nigeria. He's sponsoring Fulanis to attack, all sorts of things. There was nothing that was. So the idea is, as I said, bring knowledge to journalists and people who will come after us, and they will find themselves maybe challenged with similar situations. How did we cope? How did we manage this situation?
And now, talking about this book, I'm yet to read, the content of it, but I'm wondering how you were able to balance personal perspective with objectivity in dealing with such a very sensitive political era.
Well, you had to just do it, balancing personal and objectives that are official. You are left with no option than to do that. And say, when you serve a leader like we did, Muhammadu Buhari, who is inspired by nothing other than the nation. And this is the second half, or the second part of the objective that we set out to achieve. Bring Muhammadu Buhari up close. As it is, people still don't understand this. After 8 years in office, they need to know more. And we had the privilege of having been close to him. So we have a duty to tell, look, to bring an understanding of him. And then, of course, you began to mention some of these elements, the legacy that he left behind. Because people ask questions.
I like us to look at the two perspectives you have given. What you say that this book sets out to achieve, two very important. Let's take the first part first, which is the message you want to push out, the lessons you want practicing journalists and mass communicators to draw from this book. And you said, we get into trouble because we tell stories. We are not the actors. We are just conveying things that have happened. What message or what lesson do you think journalists can take from if they find themselves in this kind of position, considering the ethics of our profession?
Well, journalism can be defined as being, it can be activist, it can also be conveyor belt kind of thing. You are taking communication material from point A, which is source of news, to point B, which is your own audience. What is your problem? Your duty is carrying this as a conveyor belt and taking it to that end. Why do you get caught up? This is the point. And let's also admit there is enormous power in that decision by you as a reporter or editor to tell this story or that story. I read one editor who said, in the dustbin near his chair, under his desk, there were more stories in that dustbin than in the newspaper that he had published. So what makes you choose, this is the story that should go, this is the story that should not go? It's a lot of power. And how do you use it? And do you use it to persecute people or to promote public causes, good causes in society? And there are experiences that one had tried to tell from personal experience.
Sorry, let me come in. I don't know. Is the role of a journalist practically different from that of a spokesperson, of a presidential spokesperson, a government spokesperson?
Yes and no. Because the journalist in you is helpful when you are a spokesperson, because you had a president like Muhammadu Buhari, who was not a TV show person. He didn't like the exposure. He was not interested. You have to look around and source for stories around him and project what is good about the presidency. But as a spokesperson, the rule book says you must be absolutely loyal to that your boss. I remember reading about the one they call the Master of Spin. Master of Spin, Alistair MacLean. He was a spokesperson of Tony Blair, former UK Prime Minister. He was a veteran of the BBC. And he said, when I was with the BBC, the truth was my boss. When I moved to 10 Downing Street, Tony Blair was my boss. So you make your choices.
So
Very interesting.
Being a presidential spokesperson yourself, I mean, during the Buhari administration, what was the biggest communication challenge, that you faced during that era? From what you have just said, being a journalist, I mean, you felt the pulse of the people outside. Being in the villa with the president, who is your truth? Who is your boss? What was the biggest challenge for you?
You see, you have, from the training you receive in journalism, you are supposed to be skeptical of everything that everyone tells you. So when they give you these facts, you must check and cross-check. When you are in government, there is a tendency to let your guard down in the belief that you are streaming in the same course with everyone. That is a common objective. All of you are in the same government, the same political party, and all of that. So you let your guard down, assuming that nobody would abuse your trust. As a journalist, people will seek to abuse your trust, exploit you, use you. But you don't imagine that it can happen when you are working as a spokesperson in a government that is your own government. And it did happen to me. That's what you are asking me. And I'm not going to tell you the specific because I want you to buy the book. But it is there. You will see that somebody gives you information that is utterly false, and you wonder why, and then you are embarrassed there on a global scale, not just locally here. That you have told a story that is not true, and then you wonder, why would this man do this to me? Are we not in the same government? So that's the big challenge that I thought.
I'm just wondering, people, of course, we know, and I'm sorry to use this cliche, the piper, and who pays the piper, and the tune, and who detects the tune. We know that you must, as a government spokesperson, you must pass information, to your audience. I mean, it's your responsibility. It's well cut out. You already know. But what the people, the concern the people raise is how that message is usually put out. The quality of the message put out. And we see today, many spokespeople, and that is why the NIPR is bringing in the rebranding, yes, just to ensure that spokespersons are also, put the people into context when putting out their messages. So is there a nexus there, or it's just you just throw it anyhow? Anyway.
No. I think that, and let me say, I cannot pretend to have been perfect while we were there. We are not perfect. And I'm sure there are mistakes we did, which people would also point at and say, look, you saying this, but this is what you did. But the thing is that the moment you lose one sense, you and your principal, you have been sent there by the people. You are a messenger as a government. The moment you assume the status or thinking that you are the master, you are not a messenger, then you get into trouble. And so it is as at the operational level, you as a spokesperson, and then you begin to haughtily respond to it, because the opposition person, the only thing he has against you as a government is that criticism. If you take away, deny him or her, then what else do you want the opposition person to do? To go underground and start bombing institutions or what? So allow them to talk.
Not
In
many of
this
us would
book-
have. Okay.
In this book,
Go
in this
ahead.
book,
Go
did you
ahead.
try to address some of the criticisms that administration faced?
No, we didn't try to be, we're not trying to be defensive. Absolutely no. Because as I'm trying to say, inherently we believed that people had the right to criticize us. And we had a few lessons in the book. Press releases that we addressed without getting angry. Because the moment you get angry, you lose the whole debate. So as politely as we can, of course people, not everyone will agree with us. But we had allowed people to criticize us, and how do we take the criticism? So that students, as I said, will also learn from what we do.
You know, I in a moment will get to the second part of what the book, sets out to achieve. But just this last question, because you were talking about, the comportment of a spokesperson, while performing your roles, and I'm just wondering. If you were fired 6 months as a presidential spokesperson to the VP, what was it? What was it? Some of us may not have, the money to buy your book. So let's just have an insight. What was it so that we can learn?
I came in at the point when the president and the vice president were fighting below the radar. Of course, eventually it blew out in the open. But then we had a president who never believed that he would be criticized objectively. That whatever criticism was thrown at him must have been generated, must have been orchestrated by someone. So this is, again, taking us back to where we started this conversation. Because you, the journalist, are just a spokesperson. And then, so you are being punished for the sins of your boss. I was the first that was fired in the second term. 6 months into my appointment, one of you from NTA just called and said, "We are going to announce your resignation on network news." I said, I haven't resigned. They said, "No, but we have a letter from the dealer saying you have resigned." I said, "Well, so be it. After all, my appointment was itself announced on TV. So let's go." And that's how it just happened.
Now, this book is going to be launched tomorrow.
Yes, Wednesday tomorrow.
Yes, and you already said one of the objectives is to provide a reading material for students in journalism, researchers, and all of that. This is a giveaway. Just do this. So, what do you think is the one thing that a young journalist would learn from your experience? I mean, the struggles and the successes.
So journalism is a tough profession, and you have to endure. I think this is it, because to have risen from I started from television, not as a cable boy, but as a rookie reporter, rising to the highest level in a media organization. After I left television, I went to print press and general manager in it, and before we came to Villa. So, and there are risks there that you will face. It's not a bed of roses, as many people think journalism is. Okay, let me just leave it at that.
But would you advise a young journalist to tour your path? I mean, becoming a spokesperson for one government official or the other, or just stick with journalism, as in being either in print or broadcast, and not try to go the way of the politicians? I mean, does it make you a politician when you drift that way? Which is better?
Well, I think that it is good to have experiences of both.
Exactly.
It's a good mixture. I've seen The best journalism school in the world, they used to say, is the Missouri University in America. They take you to the field, like they bring you, and then they keep you in the classroom, and then you teach people for 6 months, and then you go back to the field, continue with your work. One day they'll say, Claire from NTA, come, teach students, undergraduates, teach graduates, and all over. So it's good to have, and in these days when people are saying it's multimedia that we are practicing, all the skills in communication should be built into one person.
Let's delve quickly into the governance style, because I mean you were very emphatic about the structure of governance under your former principal. Quickly, just give us, how would you describe, probably in a word or maybe a very short phrase, how would you describe governance under the former president?
Okay, I don't want to talk about what is in the book. I would say this. And I said, if you look at Buhari, go and read about Ronald Reagan, what he did, what he was, and how he governed America. There's similarity, and it's accidental, because I don't think Buhari would admire Ronald Reagan or just go after him for that. He governed like a board chairman, and he looked for competent people all around and chose them for the various leadership positions in government. He gave you everything you needed. He gave you the latitude of authority to decide. Buhari wouldn't pick the phone and call Minister of Finance and said, punish this contractor, don't pay him or don't pay her, or give this contract to this or that person. Is there testimonies are there in the books? No minister of Buhari government would tell you Buhari had ever called him for a favor.
Was that a point of strength or weakness? Because I had the privilege of, meeting the former president. My whole life I had wanted that, but I had the privilege of meeting him. And I remember I asked him one question: if he would, now that he was out of office, if he would, use his position to rally support for a government official, and he said no, he wouldn't do that. Now, was that leaving his appointees without checks, without like you said, acting as a board man, was that a point of strength for the former president? Would you consider that?
It's a choice that one will decide to make. We have had leaders who are meddlesome in an everyday sense, and they don't allow you to express yourself. Most people should usually be brought in against the background of the professional preparation that they had for given tasks. For instance, it's awkward, although it happens, that you find a lawyer being appointed as Minister of Justice. We have had some people who have had no business with information running this business, but do they get it right? So that is one. And two, again, as a leader, don't you ever pretend that you are the only patriotic person. Every one of us is a Nigerian, and we swear to oaths, and we are bound by the constitution of the country. It's not only the president that should love this country. Every minister should love their country.
Is this book absolute on the positives that you are, that you have put down, you have documented?
It's very authoritative. That's what I can tell you, because it's not hearsay. In terms of Buhari as a person, there was proximity. We were close to him. I will tell you, if he's having an interview, this is the clothes he'll wear. What food did he eat?
I mean, we can imagine the clothes that Baba would wear. We all know. We all know. But
the
did
kind
he
of
also
gift you can approach him with? All these things, we try to explain so that people will have.
And his body language, of course.
Yes. So you can't even approach him with some of these things that people are talking about.
Because we really. we really would love to read that book, and I hope you would leave some copies with us before you go. I do hope so.
By the way, those who would like...
This is NTA, like you wrote in your book, this is where you started.
1982.
So, yes, this is where you started. So
the title of the book, by the way, according to the president, Lessons from a Presidential Spokesperson's Experience. Yeah, so it's important that you know that title, just so you can look for it.
Thank you.
You know,
I stumbled over the first time. All right.
So you can look. But as we round off this conversation, I like something that you have said. You said the opposition, I mean, we're supposed to come out with their criticisms. I mean, that's their position. And you were not angry all the time. You responded calmly, you know, most of the time. What would be your advice to spokespersons? We've seen spokespersons who, I mean, who literally tear opposition apart, who use some kind of words, you know, in a bid to respond to opposition. Do you think that's the way to go? What would be your message to them on how to handle criticism?
Okay, let me make a confession that perhaps if you look back at all of the things that I have said in the past, maybe you'll also find me guilty of some of these things you have said. But that is not to say that the right thing should not be said. And as I said a while ago, the opposition has nothing by way of, in any case, the day the opposition says, this is a good government, it's a perfect government and is doing so well, they're no longer opposition. That's not how democracy works. So it's pro and con, opposite sides. So the only thing, you already have power, you have authority. So you just have to tolerate them. You can't shut them down, shut them out. Otherwise, if you deny them that, the thing is that you bottle up criticism, that bottle will explode.
I have to ask this question because we just have less than 60 seconds to round up. And I'm just wondering, because you said that the former president would love to be at the doorsteps of, you know, the poor people. He wants, you know, to be identified by the works they have done. But I want to take you up on, you know, the connection with the poor people. Many people will not agree with you with that, especially the fact that we had looked forward, you know, to having charts, you know, to engaging with the president, and that never came all through his period, you know, especially with the media. Was that deliberate?
No.
Or part of the governance?
No, it was a personal style. The work he was doing, he wanted it to touch you. Not his words, not propaganda. As I said in another show somewhere else.
But that was a way of connection.
The Igbo man will spend 3 days going to Lagos, from Lagos to go and celebrate Christmas at home. Buhari said, this is not good enough. Let's do the Onitsha Bridge, second Niger Bridge. And today, how many minutes does it take to cross the Niger? That's the kind of thing. The social investment program, the first of its type on the continent.
By the way,
that is knocking on the door of the poor.
All right. There's one thing I would like you to share. I want you to speak to a young Nigerian watching at this time, probably struggling with life. Because in your book, you talked about how you began being a son of a driver and rising to the top in your profession. Speak to a young Nigerian who is probably struggling at this point. Just give a sense of hope on how they can make it.
See, education is the greatest equalizer in the world. If you learn, you have the opportunity to go to school, take your studies very seriously and learn and read and practice. And in these days when the skills are emphasized, take to skill learning. But the point is that if you have education, you are empowered. In fact, society has no obligation to spoon feed you. You can be on your own. And as a journalist, what did it take? Self-confidence that education gives you. Because one day somebody will come and say, this story, as editor, if you write this story, don't put this story out.
All right,
I will fire you. You can tell the owner, fire me, you know that you'll get the next job because your education.
Okay, yeah, but the book will be launched tomorrow. And by the way, we forgot to ask, how is the former president doing?
We have been reading a lot of nasty things on the web. In the last 24 hours, he's in a recovery mode. We have a local saying in our area: if somebody, people were even saying he has passed on. If they say you have died, they are increasing your lifespan. And by God's grace, Buhari will continue.
We've seen that happen many times in the past.
Exactly. There is nothing we hadn't seen in the past. So it's back all over again. But I assure you that he's unwell, all right, but he's in a recovery mode.
Many thanks.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to continue to talk with you.
We wish him well, there's no time. And we wish him, quick and speedy recovery. And I don't want to say unfortunately, but this is the divine. It's a
82 years.
It's a divine. It's a heavenly divine that he would not be physically present at your lunch. We wish you also a successful lunch. All right. Yeah, Ray.
All right, so that's our package this Tuesday. Many thanks for being a part of it. Of course, we must thank Garba Shehu for being our guest.
Thank you.
It was indeed an honor, and we wish you all the very
Thank
best.
You.